In today's drawing session, we're going to do another Zentangle tile involving two different patterns, Diva Dance and Sez, S-E-Z. And we're going to do these in a kind of an unusual pattern, I guess, what I call the lava lamp effect. So let's jump right in and see where we end up. We're going to start down in the left corner of our tile. We want to make kind of a wavy line that will have some nice curves in it and just go right off the page. It doesn't have to look exactly like that, but that type of idea. And now we want to draw some aura lines right along that original line. Having to turn the tile quite a bit just to keep a nice consistent distance there with my aura. But once we do that, we're going to repeat that several more times. Now on this next line, before we do the aura, wherever we see a dip downward, we want to create an ink mound, if you will, or a widening or thickening or weighting. Different people call it by different names. But we're going to add some weight to that last aura line that we drew, just in that general area where that line dips down, kind of at the base or bottom of that line. Just want to give it some weight and some ink. There's no right or wrong amount, but you just want a nice little bump there that's just visually obvious, but without being ridiculously huge. Now let's create another aura line that follows that. Now we want to do another weighting on this line we just drew in the same area as our previous ones. And this is the essence of the Diva Dance pattern. And it can be applied and executed in hundreds of different ways, actually, I'm sure. I've never actually counted them, but the principle is the same. We draw aura lines, and we periodically in varying locations add weight to those lines before the next aura, and it creates a visual pattern through repetition of that line drawing. And you'll see all manner of different ways that the Diva Dance pattern can be applied. There's even a few different official tangles just based on whether they're kind of wavy lines or whether they're circular lines. There's Diva Dance and a Diva Dance Rock and Roll, they call it, which is the rounded or circular one. This one is just a standard Diva Dance approach, but just using it in a patterned way. And now we'll aura this again. Okay, time for another aura. And now what we want to do is draw a few orbs in this dip that we've made here. And you'll see how this contributes to the pattern as we go. Just something like that, a few random ones. It doesn't matter how many as long as you're happy with the details. And then we're going to create another aura line coming on the top here. But as we come around, we're going to follow the rough outline of those orbs that we just made. Like that. And now on the other side of this line, we're going to draw a few orbs. Just like that. And now one additional aura line here. That will again follow the general curvature of those orbs. Okay. And now, before we continue, let's take a look here how we're going to frame the next part. Let's come in maybe, let's try about a ½ inch or so. And then I just made a dot there for reference, and I'm just going to draw a straight line right up to my design there. And I'm going to also draw it going down this way. But let's see here, coming in a ½ inch or so, looks like I'm going to need a dot right about there. So let's target that spot. And then we'll just go right over from there. And now let's draw a few more aura lines here that we're going to use. Let's do one pretty close to this original line. And then on the outside, let's go a little further out, a little wider white space, if you will. And then on the inside, let's do one a little further. So we've created a little bit of a pattern here. And don't worry about perfection in your straight lines. Let them have a little character. That's fine. And now in this space, we're going to do our second tangle, which is called says. We're going to start with a little dot or a small orb, and then we just create concentric circles around that little dot, that little center orb. And you do as many of these as you feel comfortable with, keeping the pattern consistent. And then let's draw a few that are going to be right up close to those, maybe even layered. And just like with our straight lines, we're not worried about perfect lines here, just consistent patterns. Sometimes the slight variances in the lines is actually what adds some character to the drawing. And let's scatter a few of these throughout this area. So now we're going to do a little inking here. So let's ink in this center line around our border. Alright, and now we want to ink in these orbs on the bottom. Not these, but these right here. Once you have those inked in, we need to ink in this entire area behind these orbs. Now we need to also ink in this outer layer right here between those two auras. Let's also ink in one additional line right here. The second one in. If you start here, we have that one, we skip one, and we'll do this one. This is where we added the double lines without doing any of the weighting or Diva Dance. We just auraed, and so we're going to ink this in, and this will be the last chunk here that we need to ink. The last thing, if you have a wider nib pen, I'm going to use a 10 here. We're going to go around these outside circles only with the says, and wherever they meet, we're going to just continue there. In other words, we're not going to follow all the way around that circle. That's one of the distinctive details of this particular tangle. That outer line is heavier. Now, if you don't have a wider nib pen, like a Sharpie or a different Sakura pen or something, just carefully go over that outside with your existing pen and just make it darker. In other words, add weight to that outside. Once that's done, we're going to grab some color. Now, I've chosen to use, I have a set of alcohol markers here, and I'm going to use a green. It's called May Green. You don't have to do the same color, of course, but pick a color that you like, whether with a marker or a colored pencil, and we're going to add some shades now to this drawing that we've done. So first we can color in this inside area. Inside the frame is what I'm referring to. Everywhere where there is not a shape, just fill that in or color that in. And then color with the same color these orbs here that are in the black area. And now we want to color this area around the black orbs, the adjacent area. And we've got 1, 2, 3 lines that we're going to leave white. And we're going to color this one. So the next one to the outside edge. And then lastly, let's color the outside edge of our border. We can add a little bit of graphite if we'd like to make some interesting shadows, hopefully, or depth. I'm going to go around these says shapes with the circles where they overlap, and maybe where the other lines overlap them. Even the frame, I'm going to call that an overlap there. I think I'm going to add a little bit of graphite around the entire outside edge here, or inside edge if you want to think of that, since it's inside the frame. And I'm going to go right up across the frame and the whole paper area there. Depending on the color you choose yourself, you may find that that is more or less visible for you, but don't be concerned about that. Just use it to the best of the effect that you can. And I'm also going to add outside here as well. Just adding a little bit in this lighter area here around these orbs and around these curves, just to add a little bit of value difference. And where these aura lines are, just again, just a hint of value difference there. And after adding my signature and some final white gel highlights, this tile is finished. I hope you enjoyed the process today. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon here in the Tangles and Tunes channel. Take care. Bye-bye.